"This party is cheap and embarrassing," Melissa said loud enough for half the table to hear. "Honestly, we'd be better off without you." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Purple lights moved across the country club ballroom. Girls in shiny dresses took pictures near the balloon arch, and Ava stood in the middle of them, smiling like the whole world had finally noticed her. I was beside the gift table with a plastic cup of ice water, feeling my wife's words land in my chest like wet cement. Melissa wore the blue dress I'd paid for at Easton 2 weeks earlier. Her hair had been done that morning. Nails, too. She always knew how to look like a happy wife and mother when a camera pointed at her. But when there wasn't a camera, the truth slipped out. Her sister Dana covered her mouth like she was shocked, but she laughed anyway. One cousin stared at his plate. I didn't answer right away. That had always been my mistake. "My name is Ethan Parker. I'm 58. I live outside Columbus, Ohio, and I own a small commercial landscaping company. For 12 years, I believed my job in that family was simple. Show up, pay the bills, keep the peace." Ava was 4 when Melissa and I got married. Pink sneakers, little ponytails, scared of thunderstorms. She used to ask, "Are you coming back for dinner, Ethan?" Always, I'd say. She never called me Dad. Not really. So I learned not to ask for titles. I took what I could get. I went to recitals. I sat in urgent care when Ava broke her arm. I paid for Brace's dance shoes, summer camps, birthday dinners, and the custom cake sitting in the corner like a 3-tiered monument to my poor judgment. $28,000. That was the sweet 16 total by the time Melissa finished adding small touches. The country club outside Dublin, the DJ, the photographer, the catering, the decorations, the dress, the cake with edible gold flakes. I told myself it was worth it because a girl only turned 16 once. That night I arrived early in my old Ford F-150. The rain had stopped and the parking lot smelled like wet grass. I carried boxes through the side entrance while Melissa stood near the doorway pointing. "Careful with that centerpiece, Ethan. Those were expensive." I wanted to say I know, I paid for them. Instead I said I've got it. Around 6:30, Ava came out in her pale pink dress. She hugged Melissa, then turned toward me. For one small second, I thought she might hug me too. Instead, she smiled and said, "Thanks, Ethan. It looks good." That should have been enough. I tried to make it enough. By 8, the room was full. The photographer posed Ava with friends, then with Melissa's family. Nobody asked me to step in. I stayed near the edge with my ice water and made sure the catering manager had the final payment envelope. A man learns where he belongs in a room when nobody has to say it out loud. I was watching Ava laugh when Melissa came up beside me. "The flowers are wrong," she said. "They look like what you picked." "No, they look cheaper. People are having a good time. The DJ is terrible. It'll feed everybody." That's not the point. My knee throbbed from hauling decoration bins, but I kept my voice low. Ava's happy. That's the point. Then Dana walked over with a glass of white wine. "Everything okay?" Melissa didn't hesitate. "No. This is what happens when I trust Ethan to handle things. He hears special and gives me church basement." Dana laughed. Not loud, just enough. Something inside me went still. "Melissa," I said quietly. She turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What, I'm just being honest. You don't need to do this here." "Oh, please, don't act wounded. I paid for exactly what you asked for." A few heads turned. Melissa's face changed. She leaned closer, but her voice got louder. "Paid for it. You want a medal for paying for your family? I'm telling you, we'd be better off without you." The table went quiet. Not the whole room. The teenagers kept dancing. The DJ kept smiling like a man trying to survive a long night. But the adults near us heard it. I looked at my cup. The ice had melted into cloudy little pieces. My hand wasn't shaking. I always thought reaching my limit would look like anger. Instead, I felt calm. Tired but calm. I set the cup on the gift table. The plastic made a soft tap against the wood. Melissa crossed her arms, waiting for the apology. She thought this was the part where I swallowed it, remembered Ava, and decided peace mattered more than pride. I looked past Melissa. Ava was watching us. Her smile was gone. For a second, she looked 4 years old again, asking if I was coming back. That almost broke me. Almost. I turned back to Melissa. "Then you can start paying your own bills," I said. Dana's mouth opened. Melissa blinked. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." "Ethan, don't you dare walk away from me." I picked up my keys. "Enjoy the party." Melissa followed me 3 steps. "You're making a scene." I stopped and looked back. "No, I'm leaving one." Outside, the air was cool and damp. My Ford sat between 2 shiny SUVs, old and honest, and paid for. I looked through the country club windows. Purple lights kept moving. People were still dancing. The party I paid for went on without me. Then my phone buzzed. Melissa. I let it ring. It stopped, then started again. Then came a text, then Dana, then Melissa again. I turned the phone face down and started the truck. For 12 years I had answered every call, fixed every problem, covered every shortage. That night, for the first time, I drove away. And I left them sitting in a beautiful room under rented lights, surrounded by flowers and cake and music, with the bill already paid and the man who paid it gone. I got home a little after 11. The house was dark except for the little light above the stove. For years, walking through that front door meant hearing the television, Melissa talking on the phone, or Ava laughing upstairs with her friends. That night, all I heard was the refrigerator humming. I slipped off my dress shoes and rubbed my right knee before climbing the 2 steps into the kitchen. Standing all evening at the country club had done it no favors. I wasn't hungry. I filled the coffee maker anyway. Outside, a light spring rain tapped against the kitchen window. My old Ford sat in the driveway with streaks of water running down the hood. I'd been meaning to fix the driver's side mirror for almost 8 months. There was always something else that seemed more important. The coffee finished brewing around midnight. I wrapped both hands around the mug and stared at the backyard. The Weber grill sat under its faded cover. I hadn't used it much lately. Melissa always complained that charcoal smoke got into her hair. It's messy, she'd say. So I'd stopped inviting neighbors over. Funny how many little pieces of your own life disappear without you noticing. My phone buzzed again. Melissa. 5 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 9 text messages. The first one read, "Where are you?" The next, "You embarrassed me." Then, "Come back before people start talking." After that, the tone changed. "Ava is crying." I closed my eyes. That one almost worked. Almost. Because I wasn't angry with Ava. I never had been. I was angry with myself. At 4:30 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep. That had been my wake-up time for most of my adult life anyway. I pulled on an old sweatshirt, brewed another pot of coffee, and carried my laptop to the kitchen table. For years, I had avoided looking too closely at our finances. Not because I didn't know where the money went. Because I already knew. I just didn't want to admit how much of my life had disappeared one automatic payment at a time. I logged into my bank account. The screen filled with familiar names. Mortgage. Still current. I wasn't touching that. Electric. Water. Gas. Necessary. Those stayed. Then came the others. Verizon Family Plan. State Farm Insurance. Melissa's SUV payment. Boutique charge account. Streaming services. Costco family membership. Gym membership. Dance competition extras, vacation payment, monthly allowance transferred into Melissa's checking account. I kept scrolling. Then I saw the Sweet 16 payments. Country club, DJ, photographer, cake, flowers, custom invitations, decorations, dress. $27,863. I leaned back slowly. Not because of the number, because every single payment had come from my personal business distributions. Not $1 had come from Melissa. I whispered something I hadn't admitted out loud before. What have I been doing? The answer came immediately. Trying to buy peace. The phone rang. Grace. No, actually it was me calling Grace. She answered on the second ring. Ethan. I'm sorry, I know it's early. She was quiet for a moment. You never call before sunrise unless something's wrong. I looked at the banking screen. I walked out. I heard. That surprised me. You heard. Dana posted half the party on Facebook before midnight. People notice when the husband disappears. I let out a tired laugh. I guess they do. So Grace asked gently, what happened? I told her everything. Not dramatically. Just the facts. Melissa's complaints. The comment. My leaving. The silence afterward. When I finished, Grace didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, she said, Ethan, can I ask you something? Sure. If Melissa apologized today, would anything actually change? I looked back at the payment history. No. You know why? Because we'd be back here in 6 months. Exactly. Grace had managed a bank for over 30 years. She knew numbers. More importantly, she understood habits. You don't have a spending problem, she continued. You have a boundary problem. That one stung. Because she was right. I don't want to hurt Ava. I know. I've been in her life since she was 4. I know that too. I don't want her thinking I'm abandoning her. Grace sighed. Ethan, paying for everything isn't the same as loving someone. I didn't answer. She continued. Listen carefully. I grabbed a notepad. Don't touch the joint checking account. I wrote it down. Don't stop paying the mortgage. Another note. Keep the utilities current. Okay. If there's health insurance through your policy, don't cancel it without talking to your attorney. I won't. But, she paused. You absolutely can stop paying for luxuries. I looked at the list again. Authorized user credit card. Yes. Streaming services. If they're in your name, yes. Gym membership. Yes. The boutique account. Grace actually laughed. Ethan, why are you financing boutique shopping? I honestly don't know anymore. Neither do I. She became serious again. Document everything. I will. And before you make any major financial move, call a divorce attorney. The word divorce hung in the kitchen. It sounded strange, foreign. When Melissa and I married 12 years earlier, I'd honestly believed it would be forever. I wasn't sitting there planning revenge. I wasn't trying to leave her with nothing. I was simply realizing I couldn't keep pretending nothing had happened. Grace's voice softened. You've spent years protecting everybody else? I thought that's what husbands do. They do. She paused, but they shouldn't disappear while doing it. We stayed on the phone another 20 minutes. By the time we hung up, the eastern sky had begun turning pale. I made one more cup of coffee. Then I opened another browser tab. I canceled Melissa's authorized user credit card. The confirmation screen appeared. Your request has been processed successfully. One click. That was all it took. Next came the boutique account. Canceled. Streaming subscriptions. Canceled. The premium gym membership she'd insisted she needed. Canceled. The monthly allowance. Deleted. Costco family add-on. Removed. I didn't touch the mortgage. I didn't touch the utilities. I didn't touch Ava's health insurance. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was simply removing myself from expenses that had quietly become expectations. By 8:30, my phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa. You'll apologize tomorrow. I stared at the words for several seconds. 12 years earlier, I probably would have. I would have bought flowers, taken her to dinner, found some way to convince myself that I'd misunderstood everything. Instead, I locked my phone without replying. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't asking how to make everyone else comfortable. I was asking what it would take to finally respect myself. By Monday morning, Melissa still believed I'd come crawling back. I knew that because of the flowers. Not flowers she sent me. Flowers she'd had delivered to the office. Brandon carried them into my office with one eyebrow raised. They're colorful. The bouquet looked expensive. Bright roses, white lilies, and a little card tucked into the middle. I opened it. Let's stop acting like children. Come home. Melissa. I smiled without meaning to. Not because it was sweet, because she'd completely missed the point. She thought I wanted an apology. What I wanted was respect. I handed the card to Brandon. Can you give these to St. Matthew's? I think they still take flowers for the nursing home. You got it. He paused before walking away. You okay? I will be. He nodded once. I figured. Brandon had worked with me for almost 9 years. He'd seen me shovel snow climb retaining walls, negotiate contracts, and spend entire Saturdays fixing irrigation systems because a church couldn't afford emergency rates. He'd also watched me answer Melissa's calls no matter what I was doing. This was new. Very new. Around lunchtime, my phone rang. Melissa again. This time I answered. So, she said without saying hello, are you done with this little performance? I'm at work. So am I. There was a pause. Everyone keeps asking where you are. I've been at work. You know what I mean. I do. Her voice softened. Ethan, Ava's upset. I know. She thinks you're angry with her. I'm not. Then come home. I don't think that's a good idea. You can't seriously be throwing away 12 years over one argument. I looked through my office window. 2 crew trucks were pulling out for the afternoon jobs. No, I said quietly. It wasn't one argument. She didn't answer. It was 12 years of believing I'd always absorb whatever happened. That's ridiculous. Is it? You've changed. I took a slow breath. No, Melissa. I finally stopped pretending. She hung up. Tuesday brought another strategy. This time, Melissa texted me pictures. One showed Ava sitting at the kitchen island with her head resting on her arms. Another showed an untouched dinner plate. Look what you're doing to her. I stared at the screen for a long time. My chest tightened. I remembered a little girl sitting in that same kitchen years ago coloring dinosaurs while I grilled hamburgers outside. Ethan, she'd yelled through the screen door. Can I flip one? You can try. She dropped the spatula because it was too heavy, then laughed so hard she snorted. That little laugh had made every long workday worth it. I closed the photo. Melissa knew exactly which memories could weaken me. She just didn't realize something else had changed. I wasn't confusing guilt with love anymore. Wednesday afternoon, Brandon knocked on my office door carrying a thick folder. You asked me to pull the company cash flow. Thanks. He sat across from my desk. I also highlighted the owner distributions. I opened the report. Rows of numbers stretched across the pages. Business income, payroll, equipment, fuel, taxes, then my withdrawals. Every month, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. I frowned. I took that much. Brandon nodded. I always assumed you had another investment? No. I kept reading. He pointed to one section. Remember when we postponed replacing truck 3? Yeah. We had the money. So why didn't we? He looked uncomfortable. You transferred almost $23,000 to your personal account that week. I remembered exactly where it had gone. The Sweet 16 deposit, the dress, the photographer, another page. You skipped buying the new mower. Melissa wanted to book the family vacation. Another page. The office roof repairs. Ava's dance competition. Another page. I leaned back in my chair. My knee surgery consultation. Brandon looked surprised. You postponed that because of money. I said I'd do it next year. He didn't say anything. Neither of us needed to. The truth was sitting on the desk between us. I'd spent years delaying repairs. Not just on equipment. On myself. You know something, Brandon finally said. What? I always thought you just liked working. I do. No. He shook his head. I think you worked because you believed slowing down would disappoint somebody. His words landed harder than he probably intended. Because he was right. Every Saturday contract, every emergency landscaping job, every 12-hour summer day in 90-degree Ohio heat. I told myself I was providing. Maybe I had been. But somewhere along the way, I'd also become the machine that kept everyone else's lifestyle running. Thursday afternoon, Melissa called again. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. She sounded different, calmer. I just left Harper Lane Boutique. I waited. My card was declined. I know. Ethan, I removed you as an authorized user. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. I closed my office door. No, Melissa. It was humiliating. No, I kept my voice even. I stopped paying for things that were never my responsibility. They were our responsibility. Were they? My handbag wasn't hurting anybody. It wasn't helping anybody either. She let out a frustrated laugh. I can't believe you're keeping score. I'm not. It sure feels like it. I looked around my office. The walls still held old project photos. Church landscaping, office parks, community gardens, years of work. I spent 12 years making sure you never had to think about money. So I forgot to ask whether you appreciated any of it. She was silent. Finally, she said, "You're being cruel." No. I looked out at my old Ford parked beside the building. The paint had faded. The driver's mirror still needed fixing. I'd postponed it again because something else always seemed more important. I'm being honest. Before she could answer, I heard another voice in the background. Mom, Ava. Who are you talking to? Melissa covered the phone, but not completely. Ethan. A pause. Then Ava asked a question that made my heart stop. What does he mean? He paid for everything. The line went completely silent. Melissa didn't answer her. She simply ended the call. I sat there staring at the phone. For the first time since the party, I realized something important. Melissa could keep arguing with me. She could call me petty. She could tell people I was having a midlife crisis. But she couldn't keep the truth away from Ava forever. Because eventually every teenager starts asking questions. And once those questions begin, the answers have a way of finding them. I didn't hear from Ava for nearly a week. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I thought she owed me anything. Because silence leaves too much room for other people's stories. I imagined Melissa telling her I was having some kind of breakdown. That I'd chosen money over family. That I was trying to punish them. Maybe she believed every word she was saying. Maybe she had to. Meanwhile, life kept moving. Every morning I was up before sunrise making coffee in a kitchen that felt too quiet. Then I'd head to the shop, check on the crews, and spend my days visiting commercial properties around Columbus. The grass kept growing. Sprinkler systems still broke. Church parking lots still needed mulch before Sunday services. Funny how the world doesn't stop just because your own does. Late one Thursday afternoon, Brandon walked into my office with a stack of signed contracts. We landed the Westerville Medical Complex. I smiled. That's a good one. It is. He hesitated. You should celebrate. I'll settle for getting home before dark. He laughed. Baby steps. That evening, I drove past the neighborhood where Melissa and Ava still lived. Not on purpose. It was simply the quickest way home. The porch light was on. Ava's bicycle was leaning against the garage exactly where she'd always left it. For one foolish second, I almost turned into the driveway. Then I kept driving. Some doors need to stay closed until everyone inside is ready to open them. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Melissa. It was Ava. Just one text. Are you at work? I stared at it, then answered. Yes, everything okay? Nearly 5 minutes passed. Finally, another message appeared. I just had a question. Go ahead. The typing bubble came and went 3 different times, then disappeared. No message ever came. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Whatever question she wanted to ask, she wasn't ready yet. Ava was home alone the following Monday. Melissa had picked up an extra shift at the boutique. At least that's what I learned later. Ava wasn't looking for secrets. She was looking for a charger. Mine. I'd always kept an extra laptop charger in the small desk drawer in the home office because I constantly forgot to bring one back from work. She opened the wrong drawer first. Inside were folders, neatly labeled: insurance, taxes, home, medical. She almost closed it. Then she noticed an envelope with her own name written across it. Not because it was hidden, because I'd forgotten it was there. Inside were receipts from years earlier. The first one was from Nationwide Children's Hospital. 8 years old. Broken arm. Insurance covered most of it. The rest had been paid the following week. She remembered the accident, falling off her bike. She remembered crying because the cast was blue instead of purple. She remembered me sleeping in the hospital chair after Melissa went home to shower. She didn't remember the bill. Kids aren't supposed to. Underneath was another receipt. Orthodontics. Monthly payments for braces. Then another. Summer science camp. Then dance lessons. Then recital costumes. Then another invoice. The Sweet 16. Venue. Photography. Catering. Cake. Decorations. Dress. Final payment already processed. Almost $28,000. Ava sat down slowly in my old office chair. She had probably expected to find one receipt. Maybe 2. Instead, she found 12 years. In another drawer sat an old shoebox. The lid wasn't even taped shut. She opened it. Construction paper Father's Day cards she'd made in elementary school. A crayon drawing of 3 stick figures standing beside a grill. Ticket stubs from middle school band concerts. A program from her first dance recital. And dozens of birthday cards. She picked one up. Inside, written in uneven 10-year-old handwriting, were words she'd completely forgotten. Thank you for being my bonus, Dad. The paper shook in her hands. There was another card. Thanks for always coming to my shows. Another. Love you. No fancy speeches. Just the honest words of a little girl who hadn't yet learned that adults sometimes rewrite history. When Ava finally called me that evening, I was standing in line at Kroger buying hamburger buns and charcoal. I answered on the second ring. Hi. Her voice sounded small. Hi. Long silence. She stopped. You don't have to say anything. I found some things. I figured you might. Another pause. Were those all real? What things? The hospital bill? Yes. The braces? Yes. The party? Yes. She swallowed. You paid all of it. I did. Why didn't you ever tell me? I looked around the grocery store. People were comparing cereal prices. A little boy was asking for cookies. Life kept moving. Because none of that was your burden. You let Mom say, I wasn't interested in keeping score. Her breathing became uneven. I wrote those cards. You did. I don't even remember. I do. She started crying. Not loudly. Just enough that I could hear her trying to stay quiet. I'm sorry. No. You don't have to apologize tonight. But, Ava. I waited until she answered. Yeah. You were a child. She didn't speak again. Before hanging up, she whispered something that stayed with me. I don't know what's true anymore. Neither of us slept well that night. 3 days later, Melissa walked across the street carrying a plate of cookies. Grace was planting flowers along her front porch. Melissa, Grace said politely, I thought I'd bring these over. That's kind of you. Melissa smiled the same smile she'd worn at church for years. I've just been having such a difficult time. Grace nodded without saying much. Ethan has completely abandoned us financially. Grace set down her gardening gloves. Has he canceled everything. I'm sorry to hear that. Melissa seemed encouraged. He just snapped after Ava's party. Grace leaned against the porch railing. Can I ask you something? Of course. Who paid your mortgage last month? Melissa blinked. Well, who paid for Ava's Sweet 16? I mean, who pays the insurance on your SUV? Melissa's smile disappeared. That's not the point. Grace's voice remained calm. I was only asking because you said he abandoned you. Just then, old Mr. Henderson from 2 houses down slowed his lawnmower after hearing the conversation. Melissa noticed. Her face turned red. She mumbled something about needing to get home, grabbed the untouched cookies, and walked away much faster than she'd arrived. Grace watched her leave without another word. Sometimes the simplest questions are impossible to answer. The next evening, Ava overheard her mother talking on the phone in the kitchen. Melissa didn't know she was standing in the hallway. If Ethan thinks he can make me look like a fool, Melissa said through clenched teeth, just wait until the 4th of July cookout. Ava stood perfectly still. She looked toward the hallway where my old office door remained half open. Then she looked back toward her mother. For the first time in her 16 years, she realized those two doors could not both lead to the truth. The 4th of July cookout was the last place I wanted to be. I almost texted Ava that morning to tell her I couldn't make it. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then another message came in. Please come. I need to hear the truth with everybody there. I read it 3 times. Not please defend yourself. Not please forgive mom. Just, I need to hear the truth. So I put on a clean navy polo shirt, grabbed a tray of hamburger buns from Kroger, and drove my old Ford across town. My knee complained every time I pressed the brake. The radio played old country songs I barely heard. When I pulled into Melissa's cousin's driveway, the yard was already full. Little American flags lined the walkway. Kids chased each other with sparklers they weren't supposed to have yet. Someone had music playing through a portable speaker. The smell of charcoal drifted through the warm Ohio afternoon. Normal. It looked completely normal. Funny how the hardest days often do. I spotted Grace first. She gave me a small nod. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to say you're not walking into this alone. Brandon was there too, invited by Melissa's cousin months earlier, because the landscaping company had done work for their office building. He looked a little surprised to see me, but walked over anyway. You sure you want to do this? He asked quietly. No, but you're here. I promised Ava I'd come. He understood. We both looked toward the patio. Ava was helping set out potato salad and baked beans. She looked older than she had just a few weeks before. Not because she'd turned 16, because worry ages people. She saw me. For a second I thought she might walk over. Instead she gave me a small uncertain smile. I smiled back. That was enough, at least for now. Dinner hadn't even started when Melissa made her move. She waited until most of the adults had gathered under the shade trees with paper plates in their hands. Then she sighed loudly. I never thought Ethan would abandon us like this. Conversation slowed. I've had to handle everything by myself, she continued. He cut us off just because we had one disagreement. A couple of relatives frowned at me. One aunt quietly shook her head. Melissa looked around the circle. I honestly don't know what happened to him. Nobody spoke. She took that as encouragement. He embarrassed me. He embarrassed Ava. Then he just stopped acting like a husband. I stood beside the grill with a bottle of water in my hand. I didn't interrupt. Didn't defend myself. Didn't even move. Grace finally set down her glass of iced tea. Melissa, what? Can I ask you something? Melissa folded her arms. Sure. Grace smiled politely. Which bills did Ethan stop paying that were actually yours to begin with? Silence. Melissa blinked. I don't understand. I think you do. Grace's voice stayed calm. You've told everyone he abandoned you financially. That's right. So tell us. She counted slowly on her fingers. Which mortgage payment did he miss? Melissa said nothing. Which utility was disconnected? Nothing. Did he cancel your health insurance? No, but did he stop paying for the house? No. The SUV insurance? Melissa looked away. No. Grace nodded. Then maybe explain exactly what he stopped paying. The yard became strangely quiet. Even the children seemed farther away. Melissa cleared her throat. He canceled things that mattered. What things? My boutique account. Nobody answered. My gym membership. Still nothing. The streaming services. A teenage cousin actually looked confused. That's abandonment, he muttered. His mother nudged him to be quiet. Melissa's face reddened. You're twisting everything. No, Grace replied gently. I'm asking simple questions. Melissa turned toward me. Are you really going to let her attack me? I finally spoke. I'm not asking anyone to attack you. You've turned everyone against me. I haven't said a word. She pointed at me. You planned this. Before I could answer, Brandon stepped forward. If I may, Melissa looked irritated. What? He glanced at me. I nodded once. Only the facts. Nothing more. I manage Ethan's company, Brandon said. I also handle the financial reports. He kept his voice steady. The Sweet 16 payments came from Ethan's personal distributions. No one interrupted. He continued paying the mortgage after leaving. Another pause. He continued paying utilities. He maintained health insurance. He only stopped paying for discretionary expenses that were solely in his name. That was it. No speeches. No accusations. Just facts. Facts have a funny way of making arguments shrink. Melissa looked around desperately. That's private information. Brandon nodded. It would have stayed private. He glanced toward me. Until you made it public. Again, silence. Ava stood up so suddenly that her folding chair tipped backward. Everybody turned. She looked at her mother. Is it true? Melissa swallowed. What? Did Ethan pay for everything? I paid too. Mom. Her voice shook. The party. Silence. My dance lessons. Silence. My braces. Silence. When I broke my arm, Melissa looked down at the grass. We were married. That's not what I asked. Ava had tears in her eyes now. Did he pay for those things? Finally, barely above a whisper. Yes. No one moved. The only sound came from hamburgers sizzling on the Weber grill behind me. A breeze pushed little American flags back and forth along the fence. Ava slowly turned toward me. I found the cards. I nodded. I know. You kept all of them. I did. Her face crumpled. I thought... She stopped. I thought you were just there. Those 6 words hurt more than Melissa's insult at the party. Because they were honest. Children don't always notice who keeps the lights on, who skips doctor appointments, who works weekends, who quietly says yes every time someone else needs something. I walked toward her, slowly. My knee reminded me of every year I'd postponed taking care of it. When I reached her, I didn't hug her. I didn't think she'd want that. Instead, I simply said, you were a kid. She wiped her eyes. I should have known. No. I shook my head. Kids shouldn't have to read bills to know who loves them. She started crying, really crying this time. I'm sorry, Ethan. I know. I really am. I know. She stepped forward then. Not a full embrace. Just enough to wrap one arm around me for a few seconds. It was awkward. It was hesitant. It was real. Melissa looked around the yard as if searching for someone to rescue her. No one spoke. No one celebrated. There was no applause. Just quiet. Heavy, uncomfortable quiet. She finally broke it. So now everyone thinks I'm the villain. Grace answered before anyone else could. No. She looked Melissa directly in the eyes. I think everyone finally has the whole story. Melissa grabbed her purse. Without another word, she walked toward her SUV. The engine started a few moments later. Then she drove away. Nobody tried to stop her. That evening after the cookout ended, I sat in my truck for several minutes before driving home. My phone buzzed. A message from Melissa. You won this round, but you still owe me half. I stared at the screen. Months ago, I probably would have argued, explained, defended myself. Instead, I forwarded the message directly to my attorney. Then I set the phone on the passenger seat, started the engine, and headed home. Not because I'd won, because for the first time in years, I finally understood the difference between ending an argument and ending a pattern. People think revenge feels exciting, like fireworks, like winning. It doesn't. Most mornings it feels like making coffee in a quiet kitchen and remembering there's only one mug to wash. By early October, the divorce was almost finished. The leaves around Columbus had started turning orange and gold, and the mornings carried that cool Ohio air that always made my knee ache a little more. I had finally scheduled the orthopedic appointment I'd postponed for years. The doctor looked over my x-rays and smiled in the patient way doctors do when they know exactly what they're about to say. So, how long have you been ignoring this? I laughed. Longer than I should have. You've still got good options. I know. As I walked back to my truck, I realized something. For years, I had convinced myself there was never enough time to take care of my own health. The truth was simpler. I'd always put myself at the bottom of my own list. That list had finally changed. The divorce itself wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors, just paperwork, meetings, signatures. Melissa asked for more financial support than my attorney believed was reasonable. Fortunately, numbers don't have feelings. They simply tell the truth. My attorney laid out everything clearly. The mortgage had remained current the entire time. Utilities had never been interrupted. Health insurance had stayed in place. Every canceled expense had been voluntary, not legally required. Melissa had also returned to full-time work at the boutique several weeks earlier. She was capable of supporting herself. That mattered. When we walked out of the courthouse after one hearing, my attorney looked at me. You know, she said, most people spend more energy trying to punish each other. I never wanted to punish Melissa. I believe you. I just couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. She smiled. There's a difference. There really was. Business slowly settled into its usual rhythm. The Westerville Medical Complex became one of our best accounts. Brandon stopped by my office one afternoon carrying 2 cups of coffee. He sat down without saying much. You look different. I do. You seem... He searched for the word. Lighter. I thought about it. I still miss what I hoped my family would be. I know. But I don't miss wondering whether I'm appreciated. He grinned. That's progress. I laughed. I'll take it. Before leaving, Brandon glanced through the office window toward my truck. So, when are you finally fixing that side mirror? I smiled. Already ordered the part. About time. It was a small thing. But somehow fixing an old truck I'd neglected for years felt symbolic. Some repairs are about a lot more than vehicles. A few weeks later, I received a text from Ava. Do you have time Saturday afternoon? I answered almost immediately. Sure. Can I stop by? Of course. Saturday arrived cool and sunny. I spent the morning cleaning the patio and uncovering the old Weber grill. I hadn't realized how much dust had collected on it. The grill looked older. So did I. But both of us still worked. Just after 2 o'clock, I heard a car pull into the driveway. It wasn't Melissa's SUV. It was a small used Honda Civic. Ava climbed out carrying a white bakery box. She looked nervous. Older somehow. She'd started classes at the local community college a few weeks earlier and was working weekends at a neighborhood bakery to help pay for books. Seeing that made me oddly proud. Not because she had to work, because she wanted to. She walked up the driveway slowly. Hi. Hi. She held out the bakery box. I brought cupcakes. You didn't have to. I wanted to. I smiled. Come on in. The house still looked mostly the same, just quieter. She looked around the living room. I forgot how many plants you have. They're easier to take care of than people. She laughed. A real laugh. I hadn't heard one from her in a long time. We sat at the kitchen table eating cupcakes that were honestly a little too sweet. Finally, she reached into her backpack. I have something. She handed me a small envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Hers. Inside was a simple folded card. Nothing fancy, no glitter, no expensive stationery. Just a plain card from the grocery store. It read, "Thank you for still showing up." I stared at those 6 words for a long time. Then I stood, walked into my home office and opened the bottom drawer. The old shoebox was still there. Inside were all the childhood cards she'd made over the years. I carefully placed the new one on top. When I closed the lid, it felt less like ending a chapter, and more like starting a different one. I returned to the kitchen. Ava was looking out the window toward the backyard. I've been thinking. About what? I spent a long time believing whoever talked the loudest had to be right. She looked down. I don't think that anymore. I nodded. Life has a way of teaching that lesson. I'm still figuring things out with Mom. You don't have to choose between loving your mother and seeing the truth. She looked relieved. I was hoping you'd say that. I mean it. She smiled. I know. That evening after Ava left, I lit a chimney full of charcoal. Soon the familiar smell drifted across the backyard. A couple of neighbors wandered over carrying folding chairs. Grace brought potato salad. Brandon showed up with hot dogs. Someone turned on an old baseball game over a portable radio. Nobody cared whether the burgers were perfectly round. Nobody took professional photographs. Nobody complained that the decorations weren't elegant enough. We simply ate, talked, laughed. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. I stood beside my old Weber grill, flipping burgers with the same metal spatula I'd owned for years. My knee still hurt. Probably always would. Life hadn't suddenly become perfect. Some scars stay, but they stop controlling you. As I looked around the backyard, I realized something that had taken me nearly 12 years to understand. The people who truly value you rarely measure your worth by what you spend. They notice whether you show up, whether you keep your word, whether you treat them with kindness. Everything else is just noise. Getting older has taught me that protecting your peace isn't selfish. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for the people around you is stop rescuing others from the consequences of taking you for granted. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, I'd truly like to hear your story. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I hope whatever you're carrying today becomes a little lighter.